Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P, Joe P. Zapia, and today it's Tuesday, and it's time for a little discussion about predictions. It's Week 17. It's Championship Week. Can we look into the crystal balls and see the future? I hope so. At least Vegas is known to do that pretty well, and we're going to take a look at some lines, some props that are informing our fantasy decisions and what our expectations are for some players. To help me do it, as always, is Andrew Erickson, Mr. Big Pod Energy himself, who, by the way, is taking on a team who is basically like his Bizarro Superman character in a finals, Little Pod Energy. If I heard this right before the show, that's very exciting. And our friend Scott Simpson, Nimble with Numbers, is back. He was a constant guest last year on the DFS show. I love having Scott on the show, one of my favorite DFS folks. You can follow him over on the Twitter machine at Nimble W Numbers, and of course check out his work at FF Millionaires and Chalk Blocked as well. Scott's great to have you back. You've got a couple finals going on as well, correct?
Yeah, no, I'm in 3 out of 5 of my redraft leagues. That when you're not like in Scott Fish, I didn't get to the finals thing. You don't count those big tournaments because those are there's so many people in. But when you're in a 12 person league or 12 people league, I don't know what they call them anymore. I'm in 3 out of 5. And one of them I'm up against Denny Carter. So I'm excited about that. A little local Maryland league here, and then in my home league, I was 2-7, 3-8. I came back. I just kept fielding the team. I had a good team. I kept going 6-8 at the end of the year. I got in by 0.8, and now I'm the favorite in the championship. So you never give up, kids. You know what? Just keep playing, keep going, and you love it. It's what you do. That's why I've been playing for 20 years.
I wonder how many people over the years give up on teams that start like 1-4 even, where they just throw in the towel too soon. You can't do that. I mean, I had a team like that too. It's a very deep IDP league. I snuck in the back door to the championship round last week. Into the playoffs I snuck into. Just lost this week before the championship. Hey, it happens, but snuck in the back door, made the playoffs. Don't give up, everybody. We're not going to give up because we're so close to tasting glory. I've got 2 still alive. I've got the Super Flex Championship for the Big Jake Seeley League in the finals against Adam Ronis. It's the second time in 3 years we're meeting in the finals. I'm looking forward to that. And in the CBS Expert League, me and Scott Fish. So if I lose, I probably have to make another donation to the Scott Fish Bowl, I would imagine. So there you go. But it's good to always play against your friends, and it's even better to beat your enemies. So let's go and let's talk about ways to do that. Let's start with you, Andrew Erickson. Give me your number 5 fantasy prediction, what you're looking forward to this year in Week 17 that's going to inform us in decision-making and what we think players are going to do for us in the championship.
I'm hitting the over on Amon-Ra St. Brown's receiving yards at 75.5 receiving yards. Look, they're playing the Bears. The Bears can be beaten on the ground. The Bears can be beaten through the air. And I think that the Lions are going to dial up the passing game here. With Jared Goff playing in the Dome, that's where Goff has been most productive this season. The Bears since Week 8, allowing the 7th most receiving yards per game. Dead last in yards per reception. So they're allowing a lot of big plays, chunk gains down the field. So for those of you that went back to DJ Chark last week, go back to him right again. Like, if he's not playing the Jets, DJ Chark is good for 100 receiving yards, essentially, is basically what we've seen from him over the last couple weeks. So ASB has gone over 75.5 receiving yards in 6 of his last 7 games since Week 10. He has a 31% target share, ranks 5th in the NFL, and the Lions are a top 10 offense in terms of passing yards per game at home this season. So I think just more from St. Brown, who in the ECR, I believe, is wide receiver 3.
There you go. I love this game so much, by the way. Can I just tell you, my overexposure to this game could be the death of me in Week 17, but I don't care. I love it. Give me the Bears and Lions all day. Simpson, it's up to you. Scotty, show me something here that you think people should be aware of and how it's going to inform their decisions for Week 17 based on what you see out there in the market.
Well, your eyes are not fooling you. Russell Wilson has been terrible this year. just in general, it's true. It's not something, we're like, oh, he's been terrible. And he's not hit the passing mark of 220 and a hook in 3 of the last 4 games. So he's hit 142, 189, 214. He did go over it once, which was against the Kansas City Chiefs at home in Denver. But the Kansas City Chiefs at home in Kansas City, they're a top 12 defense against the pass. They only give up 206 yards per game. So, with Hackett, he sucked. We know that, but he wasn't keeping Russ from cooking. Russ has sucked himself. I mean, and I'm not a big proponent.
I wish I could get that on a T-shirt, by the way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they both suck, and so I just think it gives Kansas City's defense a bump too. They're not a defense maybe that you're on the fringe of starting, but look what the Rams defense did. My wife picked them up. got into her championship game. She goes, yeah, I picked up the Rams. I said, what? She goes, yeah, going against Russell Wilson. I mean, I was like, this girl, I taught her well. So I think ride the wave, Kansas City's defense, play him against Russell Wilson. You could get a pick six, just hopefully.
You should get your wife on the Start Sit show on Thursday.
She's way better looking than me, by the way, folks.
Well, clearly, I would imagine. But seriously, what a great call by her. So in that sense, Russell Wilson for you, does that mean Judy, Sutton, all those guys too? I mean, I know if you've somehow made it to the finals with some of those guys, it has been a miracle of sorts. Your confidence level must be pretty low then, considering in those guys too, right?
Yeah, I don't know how anybody stacking both of those would have it. I think you're either or, and maybe
Russell. If you had one of them, could you even feel good about playing one of them this week?
I'm just saying, if you had Russell Wilson as a quarterback too, like,
sure.
You probably never got here. But receiving wise, I have more confidence in Judy than Sutton. And I think it's just Russell Wilson's. He's looking downfield. You can see him overshooting. Cortland Sutton's jumping up and down, waving at him on the sidelines. Just it's apoplectic. Like, I'm right here, bro. Nope, thrown into triple coverage down in the corner of the end zone, getting picked off. So I don't think Russ is thinking very straight. So if he does go down there and Judy's open, though, it's a big play, and so I think I'd lean Judy over Sutton just because you're looking for big player bust in a championship game anyway.
I bet there's more teams that had Russell Wilson and this year actually still as single quarterback leagues were able to get by and into playoffs. Because Jared Goff, Geno Smith, you look at some of these guys that kind of came out.
That's my story. Right? I drafted Russell and then I picked up Goff.
It was a good year in single quarterback leagues, whether it be Fields, Lawrence, some of the guys I just mentioned. It's super flex where it is. Talk about rough, man. If you are in the finals in a super flex league this year, kudos, man. Yeah. You have done a fantastic job. All right, before we move on to the number 4 people on our list, I want to talk about that prop bet cheat sheet because this ties into exactly what we're talking about here. You can check out more props like this over at bettingpros.com/props. The prop bet cheat sheet is amazing. We use it for all the Betting Pro shows. If you listen over there, we do amazing shows over there about the betting market every single week. We do several shows, several live streams. But look, it's basically a cheat sheet where you look at it, and it shows you the best props versus the best projections, and then where you can get the best odds. I mean, literally takes all the work out of the equation for you. Bettingpros.com/props, the prop bet cheat sheet, the way to go ahead and make your investments. We use it all the time. It's fantastic. Go make some of those losses up in some of those season-long leagues. Make a couple bets. Next thing you know, you're like, hey, this betting thing is kind of fun. I could do this while I'm doing fantasy at the same time. Speaking of which, somebody who does that, Andrew Erickson, give us your number 4 on your top 5 Vegas trends, predictions to look forward to in week 17.
Going with running back Tyler Allegeir, going over 60.5 rushing yards. We talked about Allegeir at length on the waiver wire pod, just talking about how he is slated up. He's taking over this backfield. He's been the starter over the last couple weeks. He's been over 60.5 rushing yards in his last 2 games and 64% opportunity share. He's just clearly solidifying himself as the clear-cut RB1 in this backfield over Cordarrelle Patterson. And he didn't even have that great of a matchup last week, and he still hit the over against the Baltimore Ravens. So against a much softer matchup here, the Atlanta Falcons, who have a bottom 5 rushing defense since their bye week. The Falcons have been better against the pass since AJ Terrell's come back, but they have not been good. So I think that Allegeir, against the Cardinals, against the Cardinals defense, I think that he's going to be able to run wild, and they want to run the football. So give me the over on Tyler Allegeir.
They certainly do. We talked about it on Monday. I mean, 35 rushes in the last 2 weeks. They're over 200 yards, even getting some work in the passing game last week against Baltimore, too. He's been an RB1 and half PPR 2 weeks in a row, folks. You got to go get him in the lineup, and he's rostered in 41% of leagues still. 2 weeks in a row, he was our sleeper player of the week to add. And it's like, it didn't move. It's like nobody bought into it. And I was like, what are you doing? You at least get this guy on the cheap, add him to your roster. Look, if you're still alive, go get him, add him, and you can probably start him. One of the few guys you can plug off the waiver wire and actually start this week and feel good about. All right, next, another guy that's been on a tear lately. I love this call. I love talking about this guy. Scott Simpson, who's your number 4 player this week to talk about?
So it seems kind of obvious. Sometimes it's just low-hanging fruit out there. And don't overthink this one, but Evan Engram over 49.5 receiving yards. Let me give you his last 3 games. And, yeah, it can't be just the last 3 games, the whole season, blah, blah, blah. But with Trevor Lawrence's ascension and the winning streak is kind of, you see it on the back of the last 3 games with Evan Engram kind of being in that kind of wide receiver 1-ish role with Zay Jones. They're both just really huge targets out there. So I love how they've been used. 33 targets in the last 3 games. He's gone over 300. He's got 337 total yards, receiving yards. He's got 112 per game. And that's just ridiculous. So to get half of that in this, I really like it. And his target share, it's been above 20% the whole, of the last 4 weeks. So it's 21, 36, 24, 26. So the floor is the ceiling here. I think he's going to get you 75 to 80 yards. An interesting nugget too. One Fantasy Pros writer, Bo McBrayer, you guys might be aware of him.
Yeah, we know Bo. Yeah.
Bo _ big time. He came on my podcast last week on the Fantasy Millionaires, and he said he would eat his hat if Evan Engram scored over 5 fantasy points against the Jets. So he scored like 20. So I was just wondering, does Fantasy Pros make an edible hat for Bo to scarf down on?
I know a thing or two about getting hats for people. If you saw Derek Brown with the big hat a few weeks ago, I did
those
purchase
hats are
a
great,
big hat. Yeah. So the question is, you want him to eat a regular size hat, or should I be purchasing another big hat for him to eat? Because you never specified the size of the hat. Just saying, don't ever make bets with me, because my mind works in a very peculiar way, everybody. I love this, because I actually told somebody this week, I was like, you need to stop playing Mark Andrews. Like, enough already. It's just not happening. And I would play Evan Engram over him. He's like, what are you, crazy? I was like, no, I'm not. Play Evan Engram over him. I mean, the last 6 weeks, just completely ugly. I don't know if it's just the health thing, if it's the offense thing, whatever it is. Mark Andrews ain't getting it done. And Evan Engram has far more tight end 1 finishes in the last 6 weeks than Mark Andrews has. So go take a look. If you don't believe me, check it out yourself. Number 3 on the list, back to you, Andrew Erickson, who is on your list for top 5 fantasy predictions for week 17.
Going with Derek Carr under his passing yards at 235.5. So he's been under this number over the last 3 weeks. It's not even that high of a number. I mean, 235.5 passing yards. That's most quarterbacks wake up and throw for that amount. But Derek Carr has really struggled. He's really fallen off, despite the fact that he's gotten his weapons back. They added Darren Waller, they added Renfro, and then Derek Carr just started playing worse. So I don't know what's going on. The Raiders are reeling, I would say, a little bit here. And now they're tasked against facing in my opinion, the league's best defense, 49ers, top 5 in fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks this season. They're allowing just 234 passing yards per game. So if they're allowing just 1 yard underneath the passing yards prop, I'm going to lean towards the under, especially just the way the Carr has played. Just has not looked great. And I mean, Devontae Adams, I had Adams on one of my best teams. It was number 1 seed. And I mean, he killed me. Like these last 2 weeks, absolutely devastated my team. And obviously he was the reason I was there, as the number 1 seed. But, the more the target competition, Derek Carr's fall off and play, it's been a very bad turnout for Devontae Adams managers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny, too, looking at those games from week 11, 300 yards, week 12, 295, week 13, 250. Then he starts getting everybody back healthy, 137, 231, 174. I don't understand. It's like, where's Mac Hollins? He just likes Mac Hollins, apparently. That's what we need.
Oh, no.
Said no one ever. All right, let's get to the next guy on your list. Number 3, Scott Simpson, who made it to week 17 for you for the big fantasy predictions.
So, listen, I love CeeDee Lamb. Who doesn't love CeeDee Lamb, right? And you're going to start CeeDee Lamb in all cases. I would say this is a case to start Dak, right? Because Dak has been up and down. But against the Titans defense, they are not great against the wide receiver. They've given up over 189 yards per game to the position. They're 30th against the wide receiver position in yards, almost 3,000 yards given up. So CeeDee Lamb's over of 74 and a hook for receiving yards. 3 of the last 5 games, he's gone over 100. He's got 106. 120, 126. He's got the targets. He's got also his 22 receptions on 24 targets in his last 3 games. That's like a 90+%, reception rate. So he's catching the balls that are thrown to him too. So he's turning that into lots of yards per reception, 13.3. So, I'm nimble with numbers. I'm doing the math. I think this game he's going to need to, catch 7-8 balls like he normally does. And he's getting 10, 12, 13 yards a catch. And if he turns that into a longer gain, I think he gets over this. I think he gets in the hundreds again in this matchup. It's a Thursday night game, so it's kind of buyer beware. But, man, I'm not going against CeeDee Lamb. That guy he's like a young A.J. Brown. He's just not as heavy, but he's big. So he's going to do the same thing, I think, that A.J. Brown did to his old team. I think he's going to kind of do something like that against him this week.
Yeah, I think it was a great point there about Dak Prescott too, coming off a QB1 overall performance last week too. People were real sketch about Dak, even me, because I was watching him. Man, he had a ton of mistakes lately. Looking, and I gotta hand it to him. He is resilient, if nothing else. Like Dak Prescott's come between injuries, bad performances, bad losses sometimes, That guy's got a heart of a lion. I got nothing but respect for that dude. And this week, I do believe the Tennessee Titans may have just folded up the tents. Like, I think it's just done. I love the Jags to win that division at this point. I love it. Like, and you can get some good money on that one still, which is shocking.
Well, wasn't there a situation with the Titans have nothing to play for, right? Like they all their incentive is in week 18 when they're playing the Jaguars, right? So I mean, I've been hearing whispers that they might
sitting in Derrick Henry whispers and all that. Let me tell you, man,
that'd be terrible.
I mean, they've done it before though. They sat him in a week 16 game at the time because there was only 17 weeks.
You're right.
But they've done it before.
You're right, and I've gotten some questions about that. I know it's a tough call. I would say this: if you have Derrick Henry, you better get number 2 RB right this week. Like, there's very little room for error, because what if that game's not going their way? I can see them pulling Derrick Henry. I can see going back, not playing at all. I think that is kind of sending a weird message to a team that needs to play good football. Like, they just haven't played good football in the last couple weeks.
I get the appeal of playing, obviously, like Malik Willis, because like he needs reps. Like, he just needs to like figure it out or do something. Whereas Derrick Henry, I mean, does Derrick Henry really need reps anymore? Like, no, because when they play Jacksonville, they're just gonna give him the ball 30 times.
No, he doesn't. And look, I understand it's a tough defensive matchup here against the Cowboys, but I don't know, man. Like, I think from the momentum standpoint, you want to lose another game or look terrible dragging your rear end into play Jacksonville. Are they going to get
momentum against Dallas? Like, I guess on a short week versus 10 days off between them. I mean, I'm just making the
It's dicey. Derrick Henry is a dicey start this week, but you can't sit him.
Yeah, I mean, if he's active, you're gonna
unless they come out and say those words. We are not playing. We're giving him a week off, giving him a breather, because next week's more like a playoff game. We control our destiny. Blah blah.
But I would just say, like, be ahead of that. On waivers or whatever. Like, make sure.
Well, that's where Tyler Allegeir comes in, and guys like that, where you're going to get some carries. Like, if Derrick Henry gets, 15 carries, falls in the end zone, we'll take that. It's not going to be a 100-yard day for him probably, but it gives you 70 and a touchdown. Like, we'll take that. But Tyler Allegeir or somebody else like that, I need a little upside in the flex spot. These are things to really think about. All right, let's go to number 2 on your list. Andrew Erickson, what do you have for us in fantasy predictions for championship week?
We faded him last week, which worked out. We're back on the board here with Brian Robinson over 65.5 rushing yards, because he's not playing the 49ers. He is playing the Cleveland Browns, who cannot stop the run. They are one of the league's worst run defenses, allowing the 5th most rushing yards, 5th highest yards per attempt, 5.2 yards per carry allowed since week 11. And Brian Robinson continues to just get as many touches and carries as humanly possible. He has 19 carries per game over his last 6 games. He's averaging 82 rushing yards per game. So his rushing line at 65.5 yards, it's just too small. Like, he's going to be able to hit this, because whether it's Carson Wentz, whether it's Taylor Heineke, the Washington Commanders just want to try to take the ball out of their quarterback's hands and into the belly of Brian Robinson. So that's what I think is going to work here. We saw Alvin Kamara have an RB1 game for the first time since week 8, because, what do you know? He was playing the Cleveland Browns. So I think the matchup dictates, and this number is honestly just going to go up. Like, I would not be surprised if Brian Robinson's rushing lines props closes more around 70 yards, 75 yards, because once people just notice, oh, wait, he's playing Cleveland? Oh, yeah, over.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And I love that we brought Brian Robinson back, because we were so adamant last week. He was my must-sit of the week last week on our Start Sit show. Like, we were so tough on poor Brian Robinson. But if you listened and you played pretty much anybody else, it's a good chance you're still alive. And now you got to go back to the well. As scary as it is, that's last week. It's over. You can't live in the past. Live in the now. That's what Garth taught me from Wayne's World. Live in the now. Very important bit of advice. Let's get to your number 2 guy, Scott Simpson. What do you have for us? Fantasy predictions for week 17.
Okay, so somebody who has been kind of reborn in the last couple of weeks has been George Kittle, right? He's been pretty good the last 2 weeks, some would say.
Pretty good.
Oh, yeah, pretty good.
He's been waiting all day.
I know.
I can't wait for Erickson to have
kids. I want to make sure I get my one pun in before I die, but
you got to understand this, Simpson. Erickson doesn't have kids yet. He's engaged. He's going to, hopefully be a dad someday like you and I are. His dad joke game is so strong already. I cannot wait for the eye rolls his children are going to give him as they get to be 10, 11, and 12. It's going to be fantastic. I love it.
My 11-year-old just goes, no.
See, my 10-year-old, she thinks it's hilarious. My 12-year-old, soon to be 13, is like, ugh. Hilarious.
London's
in fact, my daughter got a dad joke calendar I got her for Christmas.
They just think I'm an idiot. They're just like, no. They call me Mid. They're like, you're mid.
Oh, mid.
I said,
I haven't gotten called mid yet.
I got crushed.
That
mid. Oh man,
that is harsh.
But now
That's
that I know
harsh.
mid, I'll use it on them, and then like you can't say that. So
Yes, you
but
can.
somebody who's not been mid, like we said, George Kittle could segue back, right?
Well done.
14 of 18 targets, so he's catching the ball last 3 games. He's getting 80 yards per game in these last 3 games too. And then the icing on the cake too, and I'm not trying to be mean to Luke Masterson, God bless him, and his 35.9 PFF graded coverage grade, right? Good for you. You're trying, but PFF has our boy Kittle as the 2nd highest rated matchup advantage based on that linebacker matchup. And so maybe he's not going to be on the whole time, but, Kittle right now is hot. Purdy is hot too in that relationship. You kind of saw them scorch the Commanders last week, and who have a terrible, I would say, not terrible, but subpar linebacker core, but a pretty good overall corner coverage, and safeties are top 2 in the game, right? So it wasn't even about the safeties. It was kind of about how you can manipulate the linebackers. And so I think Kittle is going to be there, and I think you go over that 44.5. That's a real low number right now for me.
Oh, I could not agree more. And he has been on a tear. You're right. We always know this. We see this with the young quarterbacks. They like to check down, keep things simple, especially with Debo out. They're a little bit more limited what they do offensively. And Kittle has feasted the last 2 weeks in that scenario. It's been fantastic for him. All right. That brings us to number 1. So it's time to talk about it. Give us your number 1, Andrew Erickson, fantasy prediction, week 17. What do you got?
I'm going with James Conner, over 60.5 rushing yards. So James Conner has low-key just been an every down player since coming back from his injury. He has played in 91% of the snaps, or at least 91% of the snaps in his last 3 games, which is unheard of usage in the NFL at running back nowadays. Like, most running backs don't ever play 90% of the snaps. Like James Conner, they're using him on every single down. Like Keontae Engram, like no, like they gave him 1 pitch and he dropped it and he's like, well, back to the bench. Let's get James Conner back on the field. So he's at least 15 carries in 3 straight games. And I just like the matchup here. I was so in love with this matchup. I was talking about it when I was talking about Tyler Algier. But the Atlanta is allowing the 4th most rushing yards per game to running backs since week 11 at 122. James Conner never comes off the field, and he's going to see all the carries against this bottom 5 run defense. So for me, James Conner is going to soar over this mark unless he gets hurt. Like, that's pretty much the only way I don't see James Conner hitting, which it can happen. Guys do get hurt, especially James Conner. But right now, you just got to continue to ride the wave with James Conner since he's returned from his prior injury of the year.
Volume is king. And he's been the king of volume for the last couple of weeks. There's no doubt about that. Like, he's just getting all the opportunities, especially with the limitations in the quarterback that they have. They have to run the football, this team right now. That's just who they are.
Can I'm still trying to get that Christmas. No races on that. Can I jump on? And
100%.
I also think if it when his receiving prop comes out, probably around 3.5, I would smash the over on that too, because they're dumping to him. They're looking for him in screens. Like, he is the focal point. McSorley, God bless him out there. He's running for his life. And then even, let's say, God forbid, Colt McCoy comes back. Either way, they're looking for Conner. So I love that pick, Erickson, by the way. It was my kind of pick too. I saw that. I was like, oh, that's one of my favorite picks. So
I put it number 1. That's good.
That's really good. There you go. Yeah. All right. Speaking of number 1s, Scott Simpson, what's your number 1 fantasy prediction for week 17? I like where we're starting, and I see you wearing a Vikings jersey. So not to put the spoiler out for the YouTube channel.
I'm not a Vikings fan per se, but I have a fire jersey that I wore to the Expo, which was great. So people could just recognize me and be like, oh, there's Scott. He's right there wearing that jersey. But I will say, Justin Jefferson this year, like we talked off air before, because guys talk football, to talk about how Joe had bet player of the year, offensive player of the year prop before the season. Talking about betting. It's a betting show. We're talking betting.
14-1.
Right, 14-1, and so he's waiting to cash in on that, which is going to happen. And so I think with that being said, his prop is 92.5 receiving yards. He's hit over 98 yards in 11 of 15 games. He's hit over 100 in the last 4 or 5 games. And then this is the kicker. This is why I knew my jersey was in play. He had 69 targets in the last 5 games, right? And so, I've got a Jared Allen jersey, and so I got to represent, and so it's just it's going to happen. And the reason it's going to happen is only 208 yards to tie, and then 209 yards to break Calvin Johnson's single season receiving record of 1,964 yards. And so maybe not in this game he gets 208, but I can see him getting 140, 150. He got 180 in the beginning of the year against the Packers. And honestly, Jair Alexander, great last couple games, but Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver I think we've seen in a long time. And so I'm going to go over the 92.5. And I think it's my favorite play. And I have him on that team I talked about earlier who kind of got me to the championship. I got in, by the way, 7 people, and they're all guys, but 7 guys tied at 6 and 8 at the end of the year, which was putrid, right? But that's what we did. And then I was in by 0.8. It's all because of Justin Jefferson, man. That guy was my first round pick. I'm riding him, dying with him. Love Justin Jefferson. Nice. So cash that in at the end.
The 1-1. Justin Jefferson. Ladies and gentlemen, till my throat was sore talking about Justin Jefferson. July, August, the 1-1. I took him
104. No one else. They all went running back.
That was the beauty of Justin Jefferson. If you had a top 5 pick, it was pretty much there for you. If I had the 1, Andrew Erickson was in enough mock drafts with me that I took Justin Jefferson. If you gave me the 5th pick, I took Justin Jefferson. He gave me the 7th pick and he made it there. I took Justin Jefferson. Look, in PPR right now, the leading scorer. He was leading scorer through the regular season. It's been miraculous what he's done, and more miraculous when you consider he's not doing it with an elite quarterback. And I love that he is now in the conversation for MVP. No wide receiver has ever won MVP. And you can make the case that Justin Jefferson makes Kirk Cousins better. Okay. It's not the other way around. And I think it's time to start acknowledging these guys. Mahomes or Hurts is probably going to win. La-di-da. That's fine. But I like Justin Jefferson to get a little bit more respect. I like that his name's on the board for the first time this year. Very exciting. Yeah. I like this narrative growing at the end. He's not going to win it, probably. But if he does, it makes me very happy. If he does, I'll go out and buy myself. In fact, with my winnings from the 14-1 AP Offensive Player of the Year, a couple hundred I put on that at 14-1. I believe I have to get myself a Justin Jefferson jersey or a Funko or something here in the office. Got to have that. But next year, who's the 1-1, Erickson? Who's the 1-1? Say his name.
Yeah, Justin Jefferson.
I just hear Kirk Cousins in the background. You like that?
He was like, "Hey
Sorry,
guys!"
I may have hit my drop machine. I
definitely heard Kirk
Cousins. Gosh darn it!
I think right now it's really hard to not put Justin Jefferson at the 1-on-1. We will have debates trying to figure out if we can put anyone to dethrone him, but I don't know.
I can't wait for that. I will be ready for it, just like I was this year.
Well, no, but I think that the conversation for it will be interesting because I think, Joe, you always bring up that there isn't enough debate sometimes of who the number 1 overall pick is. So I'll see if there are any names that can really compete with Jefferson, or is it really as simple as no, he's locked and loaded. So right now, at least he's the guy.
We talk about windows where players have windows, right? Where guys like, this guy wins MVP a couple years and this guy, like Antonio Brown had himself a fantasy window. As crazy lunatic as he is, let's not forget there were some years there and people didn't want to take him 1 overall, but it was like a good 3-4 years where Antonio Brown was the best fantasy asset, but nobody wanted to acknowledge it because he wasn't a running back because people were stuck in the old ways. But if you took AB, you won a lot of leagues. I feel like we're in that window here with Justin Jefferson and everybody should just acknowledge it, enjoy it. And then, and you're right, there's been some amazing wide receiver talent come into this league in the last couple of years too. Just Jamar Chase, number 1, I think, is that first competitor we could talk about next year. If he can stay healthy with Burrow, forget it. All right, everybody, it's time for Listener Mailbag, where we take your questions and we answer them here on the show right from our Discord, fantasypros.com/chat, free to join. But if you're premium, you get to ask us questions on the AMAs, you get to hang out on the stages with us. So many cool things. Check it out. If you didn't all year, this is the time. Check it out. See what it's all about. Amazing community at Fantasy Pros. This one is from Ryan Levin. Gardner Minshew, Brock Purdy, or Mike White? I need to replace Tua for the championship. Who are you going with here? Minshew, Purdy, Mike White? I think you know my answer, Erickson. You know me. Magic Mike White is always that guy. Against Seattle? Let's go, baby. What do you think, AE?
I'm going to go with Minshew. Just Mike White's coming back from his injury. We'll see how healthy he is, if he's going to get an injection on his ribs or something like that. And also, there were some whispers that they're going to maintain this Chris Streveler package. So that could potentially take away some red zone opportunities for Mike White. So all things being considered, I'm going to go with Minshew, who obviously looked fantastic, was very productive in fantasy last week, and I think he's got a good matchup against the Saints. So I will lean slightly towards Minshew.
You're playing it safer. I'm playing with house money. Simpson, what are you playing with?
I wanted to be a little different and go Purdy. The thing is, though, they could just hand the ball off to Christian McCaffrey, who, by the way, I think his rushing prop is smashable too at like 65.5. Like Raiders defense is terrible, you can run on them. You can pass on them. Like I would look at his passing yards prop too. Like they could just go full Christian McCaffrey on the Raiders, and then won't even need to kind of do anything. But if Brock Purdy is needed, I kind of like it. But I would lean Minshew just because that offensive line is really good. I know they've got a few people out and stuff, but his ability to kind of scramble, get out of the play, and extend the play too. AJ Brown, the Slim Reaper. I gotta lean Minshew. So sorry, Joe, I didn't want to go against you, but
that's okay. I am Magic. I'm gonna Magic Mike and we're gonna go for injections together. It's gonna be fantastic. I'm gonna get a sympathy injection just for him.
Together going under.
I'm gonna hold his hand through the whole thing because I gotta start him this week. Because we talked about this, Erickson. I had to start Sam Darnold in that flex league in the playoffs.
Sam Darnold came through.
Told you I was feeling the Sam Darnold. Now it's Sam Darnold, or I got Mike White or Mac Jones for that second QB spot because I got Cousins and Jefferson together. So I don't know. I got to figure that out. But the early lead is Mike White.
You don't want to start Mac Jones, Chad? What do you mean?
I don't want to start Mac Jones. No.
I like how the mailbag is just the Joe question.
Okay, yeah, because he threw a touchdown. Now got super lucky that Jacoby Myers caught from this guy that no one knew who, Scotty Washington. Literally no one knew who that guy was.
Yeah.
That's the
everybody should know who Scott Simpson is, folks. Follow him on the Twitter machine at Nimble W Numbers because he is nimble with numbers very much. Scott, we're so appreciative of you coming on the show. We love having you here. Good to see you, and enjoy the rest of your holiday season, and a happy new year to you and your family. Same to all of you out there. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll be back again tomorrow with another amazing pod. Andrew Erickson, always a pleasure. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on for Andrew and Scott. I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.